We've been hearing about the market crash for literally years now. I sat in an agent meeting at my brokerage, and everyone in the room was talking about how the market had shifted and tough times were ahead. The party was over, and we needed to prepare. That was 2019, and of course, those predictions ended up being wrong. So today, I want to cover some of the doom and gloom that we're hearing in the news, talk about what your options are if you are looking to make a move, and what your best deals are if you want to buy a home right now. Sales are down, and they've been down every month for the last 16 months, year over year. 16 months ago, if we'd known that statistic, we would have predicted significantly lower prices. In fact, most people 16 months ago were predicting significantly lower prices, but that just hasn't happened. Days on the market have moved higher, but homes are still selling, and sometimes we're still seeing homes get multiple offers. There are a lot of mixed signals right now, so it's a little tougher to figure out what's really going on. Real estate guru Robert Allen had a famous quote: "Don't wait to buy real estate and wait." And over a long enough timeline, that's really held true. So should you buy a home right now? Well, the short answer to that is a solid maybe. I don't think there's any disputing that we have some really tough economic times ahead of us. But I also see rates ticking so much higher that people can afford less home. And if they get much higher, it's going to price a lot more people out of the market. And it looks like that's what's happening. So let me say this. I'm not making a video to try and change your mind. If you want to buy a house, I can give you all the bad news in the world and it won't change your mind. If you've decided that I'm a crackpot and now's the worst time to ever buy a house, I can't say anything to change your mind. I just want to give you a fair amount of information, make it as balanced as possible, and you can make the best decision for yourself. The beautiful truth is you can buy a house with little to no money down. You can live in it for 30 years, you pay it off, and if you want to retire, you can afford to retire because you don't have to keep paying for a place to live. The bank puts up all the money and you get the appreciation. So when your home goes up in value, you don't share those profits with the bank. That's yours. And over the last 10 years or so, that's been a sweet deal, especially in Colorado. Home prices have doubled, and in some places they've even tripled in that time. So if at any point in the last 10 years you've tried to time the market and wait, you're probably kicking yourself because you've missed out on some profits. But we're starting to see that now. People are waiting because they think that prices are going to drop or that rates will maybe drop in the future and they'll get a better deal if they wait. So are these people right or are they wrong? On one side, we have industry experts who say that now's a great time to buy because inventory is so low, which it is. And even if prices fall, homes won't be more affordable because rates are higher, negating any savings you're likely to see with lower prices. Now, on the other side, we have people calling for a crash, right? Everyone's talking about a real estate crash. You've got hedge fund managers, you've got YouTubers, and everyone in between. Nick Gurley has a YouTube channel called Reventure Consulting that I'll link to in the description, and I like his channel a lot. But he's been calling for a significant correction in the real estate market for years. But every video of his brings out his detractors. And I'll link to one of those in the description as well. Now they present Nick's information and then they debunk it, usually with great prejudice. And you could watch these videos all day and still not be any closer to knowing who's right. Always keep in mind that bad news gets more clicks than good news. The fact is, everybody's situation's different. If you're in a place where your job is secure, you've built a little bit of a nest egg, you have a little money saved up, you are living well within your means, now's probably a good time for you to buy a home. But if you're living on credit cards and maybe you're struggling to keep your head above water, then you probably should reconsider buying a home right now and get yourself in a little better place where you have a little more financial stability. And it's not as easy as saying buy real estate and wait. More has to be considered, especially when you're looking at buying a home in times like these. And what do I mean when I say times like these? As a nation, we're adding trillions to our national debt every year. This has led to inflation like we haven't seen since the 70s. The definition of what a recession is has changed. We've been promised a great reset by Klaus Schwab and the World Economic Forum crowd, who have said, we will own nothing and we'll be happy about it. The only reason the banking system didn't collapse earlier this year is because the Federal Reserve stepped in and provided liquidity to banks that were struggling. Deposits over the typical $250,000 limit were covered as well. BRICS nations and Western nations don't seem to be getting along. We have new countries joining NATO. Commercial real estate has struggled, and that's likely to hurt regional banks. Do you remember when Zillow was paying more for houses than they were worth? Well, Zillow called it a problem with their algorithm. But they've been accused of doing this on purpose and artificially pushing home prices higher in some of these key markets. Whatever is happening in Ukraine. And now, this latest war in the Middle East. It's all incredibly unsettling. And on a side note, did you see China's taking their pandas back? There'll be no pandas in the United States in 2024. That doesn't seem like a good omen. Now I'm basing the future of the economy on panda bears? Yeah, all kidding aside, bankers are going to do what bankers are going to do. And we don't have any say in that. We don't get to see behind the curtain. We don't see everyone pulling the strings. Sometimes the people win, and sometimes, like in 2008, the people lose. So where does that leave us? The truth is that there's still some reasons to buy a house right now. So if you are one of those people, again, I'm not trying to change your mind. If you're one of those people who has decided now's a really good time to buy a house, here's 3 tips that I have for you. And this isn't necessarily for the luxury buyer. Our luxury market's really strong. This is for the person who's buying the first or second home, and maybe you're not quite sure what to do with that. This is for you. The first tip I have for you is don't stretch affordability. Don't buy more house than you can comfortably afford. And I would also say, don't buy a house if you don't have some money saved up for tough times, if tough times show up at your front door. Now, the second tip I have for you is stick with a fixed mortgage. Sure, you can buy the rate down. Just do a permanent buy down. Or if you're doing a VA, you might want to do a 2-1 buy down. That might be an option for you, especially if your income is going to increase over the next year or two, which does happen for military buyers as they get promoted and move up through the ranks. I'm just saying steer clear of the adjustables. They're great loans sometimes, but for most people, you'll be better off to pay a little bit higher monthly payment and lock in that rate, especially right now. Rates are in the 7.5 to 7.75 range, depending on where you're shopping. So if rates hit 9, 10% or even higher, you'll feel like a genius if you locked in at 7.5 and you have that for the life of the loan. So yeah, you can save a couple of $100 with an ARM, but I don't really recommend that right now. We saw how that worked out in 2008, and I'm steering clear of ARMs right now. Now, the third tip I have for you is to check out some of the little known programs. Do everything you can to take advantage of the loan programs that are available to you. You can buy a house for little to no money down, and that might be your best bet, but sometimes it's not. So there are things called assumable loans, and you may have heard about them, but you may not know where to find much information on. I did make a video on that a couple of months ago. I'll put a link to that in the description. But it's basically you taking over somebody else's loan. You take over the term of the loan, you take over the rate, you take over all of it. You take over the payment. I just looked at one today that came through. It was a $300,000 home. If you were looking at it new, would be in the $2,200 range for a monthly payment. But it's an assumable loan, and the rate was below 3.5%. So if you bought the house and you brought the difference between what they owe and the sale price, you're looking at bringing $20,000 to closing, but you get the house with a $1,500 payment, and that's yours for the life of the loan. So look at different options that are available to you. Sometimes those are the best ones. Another one that a lot of people don't know about are USDA loans. Oftentimes they're rural, but those rates are subsidized. So you can get a rate there on a home that you purchased today, and that rate might be below 4 or 5%. So again, check out every option available to you. There are some options that most people don't know about, and you'll be missing out if you don't do that. Bonus tip. Your friends and family are probably going to give you some advice. and it's usually given with the best of intentions, but sometimes it's bad advice, right? They love you, they care about you, so you should listen to them, but that doesn't mean that it's good advice. Ultimately, this is your decision. I've seen parents give kids bad advice on buying a home, and it was given with love, but it was still bad advice. I know mom and dad bought a Frank Lloyd Wright home for a jar of nickels and an apple pie, right? And this is a starter home that's less than half the size, but costs twice as much, and it needs some love. It needs a little bit of work. But we all start somewhere. So again, put all that through a filter of, I know they love me, but I do have to buy a home, and they may not understand the market because they're not presently looking right now the way I am. We've talked a lot about the negatives in this market. Let's hit 5 positives. The first positive, inventory isn't meeting demand. So since we don't have an abundance of inventory, we aren't seeing prices fall. We just don't have many homes to choose from right now, and that's keeping prices high. Homes are still hitting the market, and they're still selling quickly. Most of the homes that are sitting on the market just aren't priced correctly, or aren't priced correctly given the condition of the home. Some people are still wanting to try the market at a higher price, and those homes are sitting a little bit longer. Now, the second thing to keep in mind is lower prices won't necessarily mean lower payments. Rates are higher than they were, but they're probably lower than what they're going to be, with inflation being what it is. So the payment on a $400,000 house at 7.5% is roughly the same as a $360,000 house at 8.5%, which is about the same as a $330,000 house at 9.5%. Now, the third positive is inflation could be our price correction. One of the more increasingly likely scenarios is that we don't see a big price correction. Inflation being what it is, the dollar's worth, say, 8% less this year than it was last year, but home prices are staying the same, meaning, in essence, that home is worth 8% less because the price hasn't dropped, hasn't gone up, hasn't dropped. It's stayed roughly flat over the last year, but the dollar's worth 8% less. So if we continue to see more inflation, we could see home prices kind of stay the same until we get through whatever we have to work through in order for home prices to tick back up again. The fourth positive is the market's more balanced. So we're not in a place where you're writing an offer that's $50,000 to $100,000 over the asking price, and maybe you're still not even getting the house. You waive inspections. Maybe you say that you'll just take the house as is, whatever, and you'll let the sellers live in it for a month after closing. You give them everything you want. You name your firstborn child after them, and that's all so you can get the house. Well, that's not happening right now. There was a time there where you had to walk into a house and you made a decision that day, in that minute, because there were 6 other offers and you had to get your offer in. So we aren't really seeing that right now. You can get a home, negotiate a fair price, go through the full process of inspection, and make sure that it's the right home for you. And if anything, I would just call this a balanced market. It's not necessarily a buyer's market, but buyers have a little bit of say right now. And so do sellers, because there's just not much inventory. So there's a little balance in the market, which makes things a little bit nice. And the last positive is we live in Colorado Springs. Colorado is beautiful. It's always going to be beautiful. Colorado Springs is one of the prettiest places in this country to live, and it will always be a desirable place to live. So if everything else goes away, we still live in beautiful Colorado Springs. The truth is, none of us know what's going to happen with the market. I don't care if an agent's been doing this for 50 years or for 50 minutes. I don't care if it's your first house or your 12th house. We really don't know what's going to happen. For every bona fide expert who says that now is the best time in the entire world to ever buy a house, you have a really convincing pessimist letting you know that now is probably not the best time to buy a house. And there's a saying, something along the lines of, you can take every economist in the world and line them up end to end and still not reach a conclusion. So I don't know what's going to happen. Every situation's different. There's still some good deals to be had. If you are looking to buy a house, I encourage you to get out there and at least check out what's going on in the market and decide if now's the right time for you. The one thing I didn't talk about in this video that could have a big impact on the market is all the apartments that are being built. And if you've watched this video this long, let me know if you want to hear about that. We're building record numbers of apartments in Colorado Springs, and that could end up pushing rents lower, which could push some investors out of the market, is the theory. I don't know how that's going to work out, but let me know if you want to hear more about it. My name is Kevin Wade. I'm a longtime agent in Colorado Springs. If you have questions about real estate, buying, selling, investing, or just somebody who's not going to pressure you to make a decision, let me know. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have. Appreciate you watching the video. If you liked it, just give it a thumbs up. It lets YouTube know to share this with somebody else just like yourself who might be interested in real estate in this area. Thanks for watching. I appreciate it. Till next time.